world, my first. So I'm really excited to speak with Ken at Pega Systems. Ken, how are you?
I'm great. Great. Happy to talk to you.
Yeah, really excited. How do you describe Pega Systems these days for folks who might be new to Pega world?
I typically still do use the word workflow because I think it's a commonly understood thing that you're trying to process, scale amounts of transactions and work, and I think that is fundamental to who we are. I think the other piece of this is really how much we've been helping our clients digitally transform and reimagine their businesses. I mean, many of these businesses that have been around for decades, the business has changed a lot, but the technology really doesn't keep up, right? And I think that we're trying to help not only automate and build efficiencies and leverage AI, but really help our clients reimagine like who they actually are and who their client is and how that experience should exist.
Yeah, it's been on full display. Really impressive. How do you describe your role at Pega Systems, and how's that evolved over the years?
Yeah, I came into Pega Systems, so amazingly, I will be hitting my 10-year anniversary at Pega. So I've been here long enough that I think the formation of our strategy is I would certainly take full ownership for the good and the bad of that. But I started as the CFO, I helped to really drive the business model transition of moving to the cloud, and I think what I was rewarded with for that was I became COO and got to own the cloud, and so I view my role now as much as really kind of a broad leader across the organization. So I have areas that direct report to me, but if I think about what I do, I really try to make the whole thing work, right? Across engineering, across sales, across our people function areas that don't directly report into me, and also the areas that do. So I just try to help our board and Alan and our leadership team, just make sure that we're doing the things we need to do to be successful with our clients.
I'm really interested in your financial background in particular because the economics and finance behind AI is a top topic today. And what's your take as CFO, former CFO, on the economics? The headline, $40 billion invested so far in AI, and the return is yet to be evidenced. What does that mean to you as a CFO?
Well, so what's really interesting is if you start from the starting point of 1.5 trillion invested to build the capabilities for AI, use your number, $40+ billion of spend attributed to that. ROI elusive, right? I mean, is probably
murky.
Yeah, murky. Murky is probably fair. So I think the question about the cost of tokens or the cost of AI or the cost of compute, however you want to characterize that, shouldn't surprise us. If you're going to spend $1.5 trillion, and to be honest with you, a lot of the technology doesn't have 10-year life. I mean, some of the technology is 14, 16 months where you have to replace some of this. And I think with some of the reasoning capabilities and the frontier models, it's that much more expensive. It shouldn't surprise us that it's going to cost a lot to leverage this infrastructure. So, and that's not necessarily a problem, that part of it. When you start to use AI for things that you don't really have a clear understanding of ROI, or you start to use AI for things that, quite frankly, are novelties or things that are done, then there's really a lot of waste that is at risk. And I think that's where we're at this almost this point where we have to start to really be thoughtful about how do you use AI, use it for the right things, because it is going to be expensive, but you'll get value if you use it for the right things. And also using the models that you use and picking the right models, because naturally the most expensive model it might be overkill. You might get diminishing returns. So as a finance person, I look at it like unsurprising that that the vendors have to get a return for this. And that's not the problem. The problem is the unnecessary use of AI. And the example that I use is I think of AI as somewhat analogous to a utility. It's like electric, right? That's what I think it will become. And what have we done over the years around utilities? We've insulated our homes. We've created smart thermostats that know how to monitor the temperature in your house. You don't leave your lights on. There's sensors, right? Office buildings don't turn air conditioning on the weekends because nobody's there. We do all these things because we're really conscious to why would you waste money? Why would you waste you? And because there's a significant cost to building these infrastructures. So I view this analogy as AI is somewhat of a utility. And then we manage utilities. And so I think right now we're in this phase where there's a lot of trial and error. And I think that's okay because you have to be educated. But I do feel like we've hit the point where companies are going to have some very difficult decisions to make. The last point I would make on this, and I think this is one that is, somewhat, I think it's very visible, but maybe a slightly controversial topic. Much of the AI ecosystem is somewhat circular, right? You have a company that's selling a product, but lending the money to the company or investing so they can have the money to buy your product to sell to another company that actually is going to get compensated for an IPO on that exact same company. So, I do think we just need to be conscious of any perverse incentives that could exist in the system. Those are just things like, it's not unusual for that to be the case because, financial incentives will drive, different creativity around the transactions. But I think the fundamental thing is this is a powerful technology. It is expensive to run and should be used for the right purposes. And if we use them for the right purposes, I really believe the value's there. It's using them for the wrong ones is where the efficiency hits.
Yeah, so well said. And we've moved from, token maxing to like tokenomics. And so the CFO and board are now firmly looking at that. And in terms of incentives, you're moving to more of an outcome-based model. What does that look like from your perspective? Also internally, how do you think about outcomes?
So Pega has been focused on this for 10 to 15 years previous to AI, where what we thought of with our clients is if we had a seat-based license, and one of the things we could help our clients with was to allow them to scale efficiencies with their teams. A seat-based license doesn't match the value play between the vendor, Pega, and customer. So what we decided years ago was to think about a usage metric, a usage or an outcome metric, which is how many claims do we process? How many loans are originated? How much work does the system do? And we felt like that was a clear connection to the automation. It was essentially a proxy for the amount of automation that the clients were getting because the system was doing the work. So that now is even more relevant with AI, where AI is a sort of an employee, right? You could count that as a user. You have customers doing self-service, that's a user. You have your own employees. If you have the user model, it's really hard to gauge how much should you charge for all those different types of interaction. So it really comes back to what outcomes are you driving? Are and you're getting work done. That's the way we think about it. The outcomes we're driving is to automate work. Therefore, we license our clients in how much that work is automated. That's kind of the connection point.
Brilliant. And agentic is all the rage, definitely. And you've got, 1,000 people across all the different functions that you help manage. What changes for them internally and for your clients with these very large organizations when agents start to hit the streets?
So the way I think about it is that everywhere where a human being does a task that requires some level of judgment, decision, analysis, it is right for AI to optimize that. In a place like workflow, where you actually build workflow to take away the judgment of a person, AI isn't. We don't believe AI is relevant or as relevant in that deterministic workflow. When you go back to the judgment aspect, so things like legal and finance, accounting, HR, marketing, all these areas where there's lots of human beings making judgment calls or analysis of information, and they can't do that as fast as the model they can when enabled by the models. So I think that's a great use. Those are great uses for AI. I mean, just even the example that Alan used on stage around the way that you learned was you actually, you pulled an encyclopedia out and you found out what chapter and you read it, versus now how would we learn, right? You ask an agent a question and it gives you an answer. Now, doesn't mean the answer is 100% right, but it's a starting point for you on that journey of learning, and it's a much more efficient one. So I think that's kind of the way we see AI enabling. Whether that reduces the amount of people that organizations have, or it dramatically changes the profile and the actual description of the job, so to speak. I think that's still under debate. It certainly is going to change the description, the job description of what people do. The question is, do you get more done with the same amount of people, or do you get the same amount done with a lesser number of people? Those are probably situation dependent. But for a lot of our functions, we view that there's a backlog of work that we wanted to get done that we weren't able to get done.
Sure.
And if we can actually use AI to speed up the productivity of that, we can get so much more done with the people that we have.
I love that. What a great take. And you have the joy of leading investor calls and answering investor questions. Lucky you. What do they keep asking you about AI that you wish maybe they asked differently? Or how could you educate them in a different way than we're seeing today, which is based on headlines in the Wall Street Journal, basically?
I have often said that there's two traits about investors that if you understand, you can better communicate to them. The first trait is investors are very intelligent, typically because of their educational backgrounds, because of how much they see, their analytical skills. Second thing is they're very busy / lazy. Okay. Right. And that's not that's not a personal attack. It just means you have a lot going on.
Right.
The average sell side analyst covers 30 to 40 companies. It's impossible for you to be an expert on all of that. So I think first there's typically a high level of the ability to understand and process things, intellect capacity. And there's also just, I only have so much time, so I'm going to take shortcuts to figure out things. So for us, it's really important to try to make that message clear. When we talk to our financial investors, we talked about we want to be a Rule of 40 company. We want to move to the cloud. We wanted cloud choice. Here's why. Those are things that you have to just continue to nurture. Now we're in a world where investors are getting so much noise. And so fast, the noise, what happens with the next release? What is that? What are AI companies saying they're doing? How much is the spend? Is it really what we hear or not? These companies aren't public yet, so we don't really know what the economics look like. We do know how much is being spent on infrastructure, and then they hear the narratives around the SaaS apocalypse or SaaSacre, someone called it once. I mean, all these, and there's a lot of stuff that can partially resonate, and there's stuff that doesn't make sense. And I think the part that investors, I think, have really gravitated onto is we know there's a place for AI. We understand the value. We've seen it ourselves. The concept of deterministic workflows has really resonated with investors because they're talking to clients. Right. And those companies are saying, I'm not going to AI my ERP system, right? I mean, that. So I think they understand that there's a difference, but because of so much of the noise, I think it's still creating this gap of what is real, what is reality. And so I think our job as a participant in that conversation is to continue to use examples, to use client examples, to have even encourage our clients to talk about what's real and what isn't real. And then naturally to use that to explain our roadmap and how we're enabling our clients, and then we have to execute, obviously. So I think it is a challenging time because it's disruptive, it's confusing, but I think we just have to anchor on those two things. Investors and analysts have a high capacity to understand and a limited time to be able to do it. And so we just got to try to continue to simplify that message.
Love it. Simplify. It's always good. Let's talk about the people side. You're known for building a culture of engagement and collaboration, and the energy was here at Pega World. Really impressive to see. You came up through the CPA side, the financial side of the house. Lots of questions about young people on what this means. Should I go into a field like accounting? Should I go into computer science even? Lots of debates, including with my kid. How does that shape how you think about AI and your advice to this next generation of employees and workers as they think about their career path?
That's a great question. So I have two of my children are in college right now, and so I have these conversations real time. The way I see the world changing with AI is, if you think about, there's really kind of in my view, there's a 4-stage approach to how kind of innovation happens. There's a strategy stage, which is, where are we going? What problem are we trying to solve? There's I would call it product manager or product management stage, which then takes the strategy and formulates it into an actionable set of, here's how we're going to do it. Then there's the actual work that's done. We'll call that coding for right now, right? And then there's, at the back end, the validation step, right? And so what I think really will dramatically change is that execution stage will get automated more. It'll thin the layers of management, and it'll put a heavy premium on people that can see what's happening and understand what's important, see the problem. That's more entrepreneurial skills. The product manager function of how to translate that and communicate that now to models potentially, or to a combination of models and people. And then the validation or the skeptic side of the back end is, I want to make sure this actually works. What was it supposed to be? So I think what I've been telling my kids is, one, you have to be curious. You have to understand and be observant around options that people have, that companies have, and then you got to make sure that you understand, like, how does the problem get solved? And then the other part is, you could be a big contributor into ensuring that what was supposed to be built was actually built. So roles like accounting and consultants and engineers, they will be changed dramatically. But if you are a curious person that loves to learn, that can focus on how to formulate an actionable way to get something done, or someone that's really good at validating that it actually works, those are somewhat two different skills. AI, you'll thrive in that environment, because that's what companies are going to look for. They're going to look for people that can explain to the models and also manage them, and on the back end, make sure they did exactly what it was that we wanted them to build.
Oh, that's a great take. So final question, we talked about the murky ROI for AI in the enterprise. Let's look at this time next year at Pega World 2027. What's a financial metric you think you'll be looking at to see if and when AI is paying off? What's the leading indicator, do you think?
I think that we're, as a business community, I think we're going to have clear ROI examples. A year from now, if we are still wading in the waters of, I don't really know what value I'm getting, you won't survive. So I think between now and probably the next quarter or two, I think you're going to have a lot more focus on, by the way, it's completely fine to do experimental. So if you just say, I don't care about ROI because I'm just trying to experiment, but that's not operational, that's not scale. But if you're actually building or transforming your business, you have to have a direction that you're going. You have to understand what outcome. And then if you understand the outcome, you could start to measure the ROI. So I think most companies are going to be really anchoring in or laser focused on, I've actually implemented AI here, and this is actually the outcome that I got. It could be innovation, could be customer satisfaction, could be cost or economics, could be where you sit in the value chain, how fast you can transform and innovate, take market share. Lots of different ways to get there.
What an exciting time. It's going to be a great thing to watch.
It is.
Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone for listening, watching.
Thank you.